Okay, so you know we live in Jamaica where there's always something happening, and sometimes I know the news may have missed you. So here are my top 10 stories of the week. Feel free to disagree. Feel free to tell me if you agree or not. Comment below. All right, would love to hear from you. Stay tuned. All right, so starting at number 10, this is actually a sports story, but it's a story that everybody in Jamaica, maybe a little exaggeration there, but a lot of Jamaicans are following this story, and it's really, really interesting. This is the story of the Jamaican men's 4x4 team trying to make the Olympics. You may know that the Jamaican team, which performed at the World Relays in May in the Bahamas, did not do well enough to get a spot. So there are efforts now to try to get them to have that qualifying time that they need to get into the Olympics. They need to run faster than 2:59.12, which was a time run earlier this year by Zambia. Now, a Jamaican team ran recently in the Bahamas at the NACAC New Life Invitational, but again, didn't make the time. So the last ditch effort now is going to be at the Jamaican National Trials coming up at the end of June. And the schedule has been set to accommodate it. So the men's 400 is going to be, the heats is going to be Thursday morning. The semifinals will be Thursday evening. The finals will be on Friday so that the men can have a rest on Saturday and can run the relay on Sunday and hopefully will make the qualifying time. If Jamaica doesn't make it at the trials, that will be it. There are no more chances, and it would be the first time in decades that Jamaica will not have a men's 4x4 team at the Olympics. But hey, let's wish them luck and let's cheer them on. Story number 9 is a story of the founder and the chairman of Pulse Investments, Kingsley Cooper, who passed away in Florida at the age of 71. Now, Kingsley Cooper was a lawyer, but he became a household name based on his modeling agency, which propelled a number of Jamaicans and Caribbean nationals to international fame. He also later went into entertainment as well as real estate. Story number 8, Kingston seems set for another long, dry summer. The National Water Commission has announced that due to falling levels at the Mona Reservoir, customers and communities served by the Mona Reservoir are again, starting June 24, going to be seeing water lockoffs. These communities will have water between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. So catch up that water, folks. Story number 7 involves a video you may have seen. It's a video that's gone viral that shows an altercation between a policewoman and a woman she was trying to arrest. And you may have seen the policewoman holding the woman by her hair, while the woman now was holding on to the policewoman's clothes. The allegations were that the police had been called to a school in St. Catherine because of the behavior of the woman. Now, the woman, whose name is Tashana Hilton, has since been charged with disorderly conduct, assault, occasioning bodily harm, as well as malicious destruction of property. And what this video did was to really spark a national conversation about how the police deal with members of the public that they're trying to arrest. Okay, story number 6. Results of PEP came out this week. That's a primary exit profile, and that's the exam that's used to place grade 6 students in high school. And of course, PEP replaced GSAT, which had replaced the common entrance. So we're now at PEP. The Ministry of Education said the results improved across the board. Let me just give you 2 of the results, the math and the language arts, which are 2 of the more important. Math had 5% of students who sat the exam classified as highly proficient. Another 55% were classified as proficient. 33% were classified as developing, meaning they showed partial evidence of the required competencies for that grade level, 7% were classified as beginning, meaning they showed limited to no evidence of competence required at that grade level. Now, in language arts, 6% were classified as highly proficient, 61% as proficient, 30% as developing, again, showing only partial evidence of competence required at that grade level, and 3% were classified as beginner, limited to no evidence of the required competencies at that grade level. I'd say two things about these results. It's always good to hear that we're seeing improvement, but when you look at the figures, we're still seeing 40% of our children coming in as either developing or beginning, meaning partial evidence of competence or little to no evidence of competence. And when we look at language arts, again, a third of the children, 33%, are also in that category. And these are children that we're now moving into the secondary school system who obviously do not have the skills to perform there. We hear that intensive work is going to be taking place with them in grade 7, but it remains to be seen how well they're going to do and whether in fact we're going to see these children just moving through the system and coming out at the end without any subjects. We know that's a big problem in our system. The second point I would make in relation to PEP is that we continue to have this extremely stressful placement exam for our children and continue to put them through this very stressful process instead of having a much easier and a much, what should I say, automatic or much smoother process leading them into the secondary school system. That's a problem we've had for years, showing no signs of abating. Story number 5, the much watched hearing of the Court of Appeal to decide whether there should be a retrial in the case of dancehall entertainer Vybz Kartel and his 3 co-accused. That hearing wrapped up last week after 6 days of arguments and submissions by the lawyers on both sides. And just as a reminder that this hearing came about after the Jamaica's highest court, the Privy Council, in March, quashed the men's murder convictions and sent the matter back to the Jamaican Court of Appeal for that court to decide if there should be a retrial. The men have now been in custody for nearly 13 years, and the issue of delay has been a big factor throughout this particular hearing. A reminder as well that the quashing of the convictions was because the trial judge in the matter refused to or declined to dismiss a juror who had tried to bribe other jurors in the case. And if you check out my YouTube page, you'll see that I have a complete video going into the issue of what happened with the jury. It's called The Tale of the Tainted Juror, so check it out. Story number 4 had a whole heap of people very concerned and talking. This was when reports came that a 14-year-old boy had carried a loaded gun to school at the Ocho Rios High School, apparently showing it off to his friends. The gun went off and shot a 12-year-old girl. She was shot in the thigh. No, he again has since been arrested and charged with wounding with intent using a prohibited weapon. And his name is not being released because he's a minor. She is also a minor in this particular matter. Now, this wasn't a case of school violence per se, which we've been seeing a lot of, children beating up students and using weapons and so on, because the reports are that this appeared to be an accidental shooting. But of course, the question is, how does a 14-year-old boy get a loaded gun carried to school? And of course, is there showing it off? And what it does bring into focus for us once again is a huge problem we have in society in terms of illegal guns. What are we doing about it? How much progress have we been making in that? That's a whole other discussion. Okay, now the top 3 stories this week all come from the health sector. Lots of discussion and concern and controversy over the past week in relation to the health sector. Number 3 is about Jamaica's maternal mortality rate. Figures published by the Ministry of Health showed that our maternal mortality rate has increased. In 2017, Jamaica had recorded a mortality rate of 97 per 100,000 live births. In 2022, that figure went up to 157 per 100,000 live births. The opposition spokesperson on health, Dr. Alfred Dawes, has raised questions about the maternal mortality rate, has asked what is being done about it. We heard the Ministry of Health respond. The CMO, the health minister, they're saying one of the reasons for this mortality rate is the rise in non-communicable diseases, what are called chronic diseases in Jamaican society. They also say that there is going to be a special antenatal campaign that is going to be launched to help to address this particular problem. Story number 2 has to do with a GLE report. The GLE reported that the Ministry of Health has still not submitted all the accounts it needs to submit to the Auditor General to allow for a proper assessment of how $700 billion was spent over the past 10 years. Now, the Ministry of Health responded. The Permanent Secretary, Dunstan Brand, as well as the Health Minister, Chris Tufton, they had a press conference. And they said a number of things. They said they prepared 90% of the documents that need to be sent over to the Auditor General, but that there are some difficulties. One of the difficulties, they said, relate to the legacy accounting software. They also said there's some missing data, and they said that some of the payment vouchers over the years are unsigned because the people who should have signed them have now either died, retired, or resigned, and the current staff not signing them because they can't validate what those payment vouchers are for. That sounds like a problem that can be solved, so I don't know where this is going to end up. The Ministry of Health has said it's committed to deal with the issue, and they've so far, they said, put in over 300 extra work hours to try to deal with this situation. Of course, the question does come up in terms of how is it that it managed to get this bad, and why, for instance, were those payment vouchers not being signed all along as the various activities for which the money was spent? Why were they not signed at the time of the activities and at the time the money was spent? So we'll see what happens with this one. And story number 1 this week, again, as I said, from the health sector, has to do with the ventilators in the public health system. Now, this whole issue arose following a story by Kimon Francis at the Gleaner, who wrote about the tragic death of a baby at the Maypen Hospital in Clarendon 4 days after the baby was born, because there was no ventilator for the baby. There wasn't a ventilator the baby could use at the Maypen Hospital. The Mandeville Regional Hospital, which was nearby, had a ventilator, we heard, but no staff, short staff. And then the Spanish Town Hospital in St. Catherine, Kimon reported, the Bustamante Hospital for Children, as well as the University Hospital of the West Indies, both in St. Andrew, were at capacity, could not accept the transfer of the baby from the Maypen Hospital, and after 4 days, the baby died. So again, the opposition has been raising questions about the presence and number of ventilators in the system. Chris Tufton, the minister, he came out and said there are 118 working ventilators. Now, first of all, we do have to, again, acknowledge our severe inadequacies in the public health system, the problems we have in the public health system. We know these go back for years. We know it's because of a chronic underfunding of the system over the years, but we do have to accept and acknowledge the limitations. We can't pretend that there's enough of these things when there's clearly not, because there's a family today in mourning. There's a woman who carried a baby for 9 months and has no baby at home with her because there was no ventilator in the system. And as a country, we can't feel good about that. We have to accept that that's not okay. We hear about the plans to, build new hospitals, build new wards and so on. But the fact of the matter is that today, that baby is dead. So not a wonderful note on which to end. But again, it was a really, really important story in Jamaica over the past week. Thank you so much for being here for our top 10 stories of the week. I'm Dionne. See you next time.